Greetings. I wanted to make a very brief video on the subject of how GMS, the notorious Great Millstone Israelite group, understands the name of Paul. So I'm going to show a couple of clips involving the three chief elders of GMS. Now they call themselves apostles. Anyway, those three main elders are Tahar, who's the ultimate leader of the group, and then the two men who have been following him for decades, those being Gabar and Ariamlab, who you see on your screen right now. So the first clip is going to be from a couple of Saturdays ago, with that being Saturday, September 1st, and the second clip will be from a week later, Saturday, September 8th. To first help set the context of this first clip that I'm going to show, note that what they're discussing and somewhat mocking is a great video by Vocab Malone, which came out the day before on August 31st, titled Cultist Claims the Apostle Paul is Here, which focused on a once secret doctrine among some members of GMS that Tahar himself is the Apostle Paul reincarnated. Now, that bizarre doctrine is not really going to be the focus of this video. Rather, I want to listen in and focus on what Tahar thinks the name Paul means. So listen to this first clip.
Yeah, like this guy on Vocab, right? He made that video, a 6-minute video about me, the cultist Israelite group. It says Paul is back. Yeah. Like he got us, like he caught us. Oh, yeah. I ain't never said of course he's back. Of course he's back. Of course. Sure. And it might be me. Hold on. It might just be me. That's right. I might just happen to be Paul. Y'all always saying I'm Paul. Hey. Well, God damn it. Maybe I should change my name to Paul. Here I am. So play on that. Make a video on that.
Yeah. Hey, let's give him something to talk about.
It means mouth of the power. So we are all Paul. You know, Payala.
Let's give him something to talk about.
Let's give him something to talk about. Let's give him something to talk about.
Okay. Really quick note before getting to the whole thing with what the name Paul means. When you heard Tahar say, I might just be Paul, y'all always saying I'm Paul, that actually relates to a bizarre aspect of his psychology, which I've noticed for nearly a decade. He actually thinks that when people press him on a doctrine, they themselves are confirming it. Way back in February of 2010, when I was pressing him on rumors about this secret doctrine, and I was actually the first person to press him on it, when I would press him on it back in 2010, he would actually reply with questions like what you see on the screen. Quote, the question to you is, do you believe that Tahar is Paul? That's actually Tahar himself who wrote that. Referring to himself in the third person, he wrote that to me back in 2010. I had to show the notification from my email because the account he posted the comment from no longer exists, so the comment itself is gone, but that was Tahar asking that question. That's how he responded back in 2010 when he was pressed about whether his group has this secret doctrine about him being Paul. And so when you heard him saying, I just might be Paul, y'all always saying I'm Paul, when you heard him say that, you should interpret that within the context of this long history of him acting as though pressing him on the doctrine somehow is hinting at it possibly being true. It's a bizarre line of thought, but nonetheless, that's the way he thinks. Anyway, putting that aside, getting back to the clip which I just showed from a couple of Saturdays ago, when you hear Tahar use the phrase Paya Allah, he was actually trying to refer to a Hebrew phrase which, in a more mainstream pronunciation, would be PL. He pronounced it Paya Allah because of the unique approach to Hebrew pronunciation which one West-descended Israelites take. Whatever the case, the phrase means mouth of God. He got that much right. So Tahar, perhaps thinking about the English rendering of Paul's name, believes that Paul's name is a Hebrew phrase which means mouth of God. That's what Tahar actually believes. In reality, it comes from the Greek Paulos, which itself is a loan word from the Latin word Paulus, which means little. You know, you can find it in the Vulgate and a lot of ancient Latin texts. In short, Tahar is completely wrong on this issue. Amazingly, however, the very next week, his follower, Gabar, unwittingly corrected Tahar, as when they were discussing the phenomenon of ancient Israelites with Greek and Latin names, Gabar actually correctly points out that Paul's name is not Hebrew. So consider this next clip.
And the reason why they don't get credit for being Israelites is because they had Greek and Latin names. You know?
Well, they had to keep the lie going.
But as Apostle Paul brought up before, Romans the 15th chapter, what was that? That was a shout out that the Apostle Paul was doing to who? To people that were doing the ministry that had Greek names.
Yeah, Romans the 16th chapter.
Romans 16, yeah.
Romans 16.
Well, Phoebe was a succorer, meaning a helper of the brothers. Phoebe is a Greek name. Phoebe is not Hebrew.
Yeah, because those names were prevalent among the Israelites out there that were Israelites, but they just didn't follow the custom of Israel. Most of them.
Yeah,
and
Titus.
Even some of them that did had it. You know.
Yeah, Titus is another example. Timothy.
Yeah.
Well, even Paul. Paul is not Hebrew. Paul is Greek.
Okay.
Now, in closing, recall that Tahar, while not explicitly claiming to be specifically Paul, nonetheless pretty much claims that he and his followers are the apostles reincarnated. And he also claims to know more than what the apostles knew back in the New Testament period. Here, consider this clip which Vocab himself showed back on August 31st in the aforementioned video.
That's right. Let me say this. Now, the brother's reading out of 1 Corinthians, the 13th chapter, right? Now, that showed you, did Paul know everything? No. Paul said it out of his own mouth. He didn't know everything.
Yep.
Do we know more than Paul?
Yes.
You got damn right.
Yes.
We know
In
more
this
than Paul,
generation,
man.
yes, we do.
In this generation,
Right.
we know more than Paul. We know more than Paul. We know more than Peter. We know more than John the Revelator.
Right.
We know more than all of them.
That's right.
Because we are those guys coming back in reincarnation.
That's right. Yep.
Now, I shared that only to get to ask these questions. Wouldn't the Apostle Paul, or wouldn't the apostles in general, the apostles in the first century, wouldn't they know whether Paul's name was Hebrew or Latin? And wouldn't they know what Paul's name meant? Putting Gabar's correction aside, Tahar's clumsy claim makes a mockery. I mean, it just makes an utter mockery of the idea that he knows more than the apostles in the first century did. On that note, I'll close here. I hope the viewers enjoyed this very brief video, and I look forward to the comments of others. God bless.